this one. I was like, oh, it can't be that long, right?
Okay.
Come on.
So it's January 21st. This is the high school, Neshoba High School Space Needs Task Force meeting. We do not have a quorum tonight. I'm not sure if we're going to get a quorum, but what we're going to do with the short-changed group of people that we have here is we will spend about an hour on committee business, mostly working on a draft of the final report, and we'll target ending promptly at 8 o'clock, unless we happen to get a quorum between now and then, and then we'll reevaluate. Okay? So the first thing we had on the agenda was going over the minutes, but we can't vote on them, so we'll just skip them.
Okay.
And
Well, we could go over them and make them even better if anyone has any comments. I don't.
Maureen's not here. She'll be here a little later.
Yeah.
And she should be here to hear that. Or you can just email her comments, because again, we're gonna vote on it at
Got
the
it.
next meeting anyway. Bill, can you tell us what's going on with the enrollment projection?
Sure. So we issued a purchase order from the district, so that's all set. We sent that over to NESDEC. We've executed the contract that they sent over and just received back their counter signature on the contract, so that's fully executed now in the file, ready to go. NESDEC has been working on this for, I would probably say about 2 weeks now. I spoke with them yesterday, and they sent over a list of items that they call their needs list from us. Some of those are contact information for local realtors, town planners, any new business that may be coming into the area, and I think, Bob, you're gonna help me out. We're gonna go back to the
Right.
town managers,
Right.
create a list here,
Yep.
and get that information back. They're also looking at, and I can get this in the district, I'll work with Mr. Bates, and we can get the, they're looking for new charter schools that may be opening, some other vocational school attendance, some of our choice, if we have any people choicing out, and other things that would affect enrollment internally in the school district.
Jody has some of that information too.
And I'll work with Jody also, so
Okay.
we can get this. I told them I'd have it over to them within the next week or two.
Yep.
And they're charging forward. I told them we're available if they have any questions, and, you know, we can email as a committee or whatever we need to do to answer it, so
Okay,
that way we don't hold them up. But
Okay.
everything is in process on their end.
okay.
Can you circulate that needs list so that we get a sense of what
Absolutely.
they're thinking about?
I'll have Alita post it.
Great.
And I know that Bolton has a strong economic development group.
Right.
If you want to meet up with them also for the new businesses
yeah,
meetings
that would
type
Yeah,
stuff.
I think that would be helpful
That
if
would be helpful.
they can
Yeah.
direct them towards that.
I don't know, do we have one still?
Stowe has a economic development group, which has only been in existence for about a year and a half or so, so
Okay.
they may well have a few things to offer.
So Lancaster might have one also.
Okay. I'll contact the town manager there and ask about that. The other thing we had on our agenda is we asked Perry to give us an update on what a future curriculum might look like. He's not here yet, but that's probably something that should wait for the entire committee anyway, so he doesn't have to do it twice. And so
If you want to be on camera, sit over there.
So
That's up to you.
following up on that, or following that, I guess we should just get right into the draft of the final report. Does that sound okay to everybody? So what we're saying, Maureen, is that since we don't have a quorum, we're just going to work for about an hour
Okay.
and then go. You know, I'm sure there's grammatical errors, I'm sure there's language changes that everybody has, but at this meeting, I'd like to sort of focus on the big presentation issues, the layout, you know, stuff like the use of bullet points. The idea is to make it easy to understand. Is everyone comfortable with what they've seen so far, or do they have changes they'd like to make, or anything like that?
Well, I guess one of the things in looking at it, and you kind of did exactly what you said you were gonna do.
Yeah.
But when you kind of get into it, you kind of look at the introduction, and the introduction's, kind of whatever, a little over a page, and then the executive, summaries, a little bit longer. Obviously, all the meat is in the appendices, right? I mean, kind of that's where all the, depending on how we're sorting by column, Appendix A, Appendix B, kind of what have you. But
Yeah.
there isn't, if you strip away the appendices, there's not a whole lot to the report,
Right.
right? And then kind of, so I don't know, I guess I've never seen an executive summary longer than the body of a report. But it seemed.
Well, I mean, we can rename the appendices
Yeah.
to something else.
Yeah, yeah.
If that's.
No, I mean, I guess
part of the
it's
issue.
it's more the executive summary kind of gives some of the conclusions and kind of what have you, but there's nothing that kind of builds up and you kind of go to the appendices for more detail. It's like it's almost all in the appendices. You really kind of go.
All the detail is there, yes.
Yeah. And it's high level stuff in the executive summary, but the body is mainly just kind of like a pointer, kind of where to go to.
Yes.
So there's not, it doesn't really kind of talk about any of that stuff. It's a pointer to the appendices, and I don't, it just. And I think you did a good job kind of pulling together all the stuff that we had. But I think we lose some things, like as an example, Perry had that 2-page letter that kind of talked about utilization and kind of how all the variables factor in. And I know a couple paragraphs out of that kind of got, kind of inserted into some of the appendix items. But I think some of that stuff kind of got lost. There wasn't a good spot to kind of maybe put some of those things where, because I thought that, for me personally, I think that was a very critical understanding, because I think a lot of people are going to say, what's this utilization, you're at whatever 90-something%, what's the big deal kind of type thing. And unless, kind of there's really, there's a paragraph or two on it, but I think we kind of.
But you gotta go look for it.
Yeah.
So do we need an index?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like for me, I was wondering if we really need, even if the main body of the document is only a couple pages, is the executive summary almost becomes the main body, and the appendices are all the information, and we kind of supplement some of the key points, like, if we extracted some more things from, I think Perry's 2-page, kind of letter talking about utilization and the difficulties of all the variables and the domino effect of what it does for, so I think we need to kind of capture that somewhere. So I think it's going to be a basic question that people, kind of ask. Now, maybe kind of the school committee would be more in tune with it, but at some point, if it's out for public consumption, you also kind of want to address the common questions that might arise just from someone looking at it.
There's a couple of things that I'm thinking of. One is that, instead of calling it Appendix A, we just call it issues sorted by category. And, Section A is critical, Section B is recommended, so it kind of breaks that stuff out more as opposed to just having it run in.
Yeah.
And the term appendix can go away.
Yep.
Because that gets confusing, the way it's listed. It's like, so the appendix A's, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then, when you start Section B, and then it would, you'd have an index that would say executive summary, page
Yep.
3, critical things, page 5, so on and so forth. And then you would just have one appendix at the back, which would be what I call Appendix
Yeah.
B.
I think it's more of a big picture formatting thing than, I mean, it's really just kind of how you
What-
structure what you have.
Yeah, what I tried to do in the executive summary was condense all the stuff that's in that Appendix A into a few sentences.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is, as you read it, it's not compelling.
Well, I think there were some, I guess, not that it's not compelling. I think you kind of, for the people that have been hearing this story, you kind of know what you're getting at. But for someone picking it up for the first time, if they read it, I think there's some other documents that we had, like the Perry 2-page utilization kind of.
Yeah, all that stuff is just cut and paste into this thing.
But I think there, I mean, kind of, is that letter kind of almost like, kind of, I thought it was just several paragraphs out of that Perry's letter that he put together.
No, yeah, you're right. That whole 2-page thing's not in here.
But to me, that was like one of the more critical items that's gonna come up, kind of,
Well, should that be an appendix in itself,
So maybe
utilization?
that Appendix C and.
could be, I mean, or brought in as far as just the, discussion about utilization, just 'cause I think that kind of is one of the meatier topics that we have to deal with, and I think it's also one of the topics that we have to,
Do you want to be in the camera?
that's gonna have
I
the
don't
most
want
questions.
the
It's gonna be
camera.
very
The
easy for
camera.
someone to say, oh, you got 90-something% utilization. You got 6 or 7% to go, that, like we've been talking about the whole time. So, I mean, it's not about the people around this table. I think it's for
No, okay.
for others.
All right, well, we'll just,
Oh, it's not.
so I'll remake the Appendix A into the main body of the report. And I'll add the utilization document as another appendix, because it's several pages on its own.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think it was good. I mean, I'm not trying to be giving constructive
No, I
kind of
know.
formatting
I
things,
know.
kind of.
I'm just,
Thank you.
yeah, okay.
I mean, it was a lot of work to pull it all together. Obviously.
But I had a question. Between Appendix A and Appendix B, it looks exactly the same to me.
Because it is.
What am I
It
missing?
just reformatted.
But it isn't. I'm looking at, the title's different, but, loss of building capacity, it's exactly the same, and the below it's the same. I don't know if it was just a cut and paste override, effects of the current overcrowding on students,
Wait a minute.
exactly the same. It just shows up differently on the page.
Well, the first few pages are exactly the same, because that whole section regarding overcrowding was critical. So yeah, the first couple of pages are exactly the same.
But what were we trying to show differently? How is
In,
that
in,
described differently?
in Appendix A, everything that's critical is grouped together. Everything that's important is grouped together.
It just sorted differently, but it's the
Everything
same
that's
exact
recommended,
information.
right. In Appendix B, it's more the way we approached it. Tell me everything that's wrong with the science labs, whether it's mechanical, related to the heating, related to the roof.
I'm seeing exactly the same, students are able to get their desired locations. I'm not seeing any difference.
Content is the same, it's presented differently for people who are gonna absorb it in different formats, right?
It's really just sorting the Excel spreadsheet differently.
But Lynn's point is, that may have been the intent. Did I really do that? That's what Lynn's questioning. And, there was one point where I copied Appendix A as Appendix B, and I had to go recreate it.
Okay.
But I don't think I only did that once, and, yeah, see, in Appendix A, there's no important stuff at the beginning. It's all critical. And all the important stuff is clearly grouped together in Appendix A. Whereas Appendix B, it's all over the place.
Yeah, because the appendix B, you have overcrowding and classroom utilization, current curriculum, student support, athletics, administration, and mechanical systems.
Right.
And it's
Now,
sorted that way.
The other thing I did in this report, and we hadn't discussed it before, is we had wellness, we had dealt with wellness several times, and then we dealt with athletics. And I put them together because there was so much overlap, I couldn't keep them apart. So items such as the athletic director's office, I moved into the an administrative issue. But the trainer and the locker rooms and the use of the hallways for after-school sports during the winter, I left all as part of the wellness group.
Okay.
Okay? Anybody else have?
I'm wondering, could we make a visual of this somehow? Because I'm just, as somebody that gets a lot of mail from school. I'm looking at this and I'm wondering, could we do a floor plan of the areas that you consider critical and just do colors? That would work as a visual?
You're gonna overlay
Yeah.
mechanical issues on top of space issues, on top of what about the space
But
that's not there
the area.
issues?
But see, even though it's a mechanical issue, it's critical that it affects the space. Because this is all based on, this isn't a mechanical report, this is a space report. Yes?
And we need 8 new classrooms in here, right?
Yeah.
Well, they would still be there, but maybe as an adjunct, so you have like red's, well, I probably wouldn't use red, but orange is critical. And you need the areas that are affected, because they're not really adjacent to each other, they're all over the place, aren't they?
They're all over the place. But, you know, there's items,
Let's do that again.
I'm trying to think of a place where there's, you know, the athletic trainers area, there's important stuff, and there's critical stuff, and there's desirable stuff. And so you would just have the athletic director's place on all three?
Unless you
The
have three
athletic
separate-
trainer, sorry?
Unless we do 3 separate. So
Yeah,
you have one for critical, one for,
right.
but it would show the areas.
Yeah, but, you know, then what have you gained? You'd have to have separate ones for each category.
Critical, desire, those.
I mean, if it shows that it's spread out everywhere, I mean, I guess that could, you know, kind of, it just shows the,
The magnitude of.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna do that, you should show, you know, important and critical, and it's gonna cover 80% of the school.
Yeah.
And-
well, I think that could almost be scary for some.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, they could.
I mean, kind of, someone could say, well, they're shooting for a new
And, you
school
know,
right off the
The other
bat.
part of that is, it's gonna be 80% of the school, and it's gonna be on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper,
Mm.
which is gonna make it, you know, even more opaque. I'd much rather have a graphical representation of this. It's graphical representation is much easier to understand, but I can't think of one.
Why don't we do a visual of the areas that don't need anything extra? The auditorium,
Touch, absolutely.
the auditorium, so that we don't have to touch. It doesn't have something either critical or important.
Wouldn't be many.
Wouldn't be many. I just, this is dense and it's hard to read for anybody who hasn't been doing this for 3 years or however long we've been doing it. Two and a half. Sorry, 2.5. You know, and they're just gonna, I mean, if, when this arrives, they're just gonna have to get out their highlighter and start kinda going through it
Well,
and making notes on things.
You know, I guess part of it is, I would hope the executive summary would make people at least want to go through what we call Appendix A.
So I think the one thing that might be useful is on this page, describe Appendix A is this data is presented this way, Appendix B is the same data presented this way.
Okay. Which page is that?
We have page 6 is a blank page in between the executive summary and the 2 appendixes.
All right.
So that when it goes to the school committee, you just, you know,
Right.
it's clear this is the.
Well, he wants to change what appendix A is and to take out appendix called something else. We had talked about earlier. No, it's.
Bob, I have a question.
Early too.
Yep.
When we hand this off to the school committee, are we literally just saying, here you go? Or is there gonna be like a PowerPoint presentation and all kinds of stuff with it too?
And or do we want to invite them?
I don't know
Do we
what
want to
the-
have a working group where they can ask us questions? I mean, is that? I don't know what you guys do on school committee, but
I don't know.
Because I
You know,
think that would affect the kind of product that you make. I mean, if it needs to be clear for them to read on their own, then we have to make it like almost dummy proof where they can find all the, not saying, you know what I mean?
Sorry,
It's a-
Mark.
It's a phrase. It's a phrase. It's a phrase. I didn't mean anything
She
derogatory.
needs space needs for dummies.
No.
That's what we need to call this.
I mean, if it took us 2.5 years to get to this,
Yes.
someone reading it for the first time is not going
That's
to
my
understand
point.
it. But if it's an oral presentation with a slideshow, and if people are there to answer questions, this might be just fine as long as we have slides and someone there to answer the questions.
Yeah, and that's probably a good point. This is probably the definitive document, and we need to put either an FAQ together
Yeah.
or a PowerPoint or both
Yeah,
to kind of highlight what the issues are.
yeah.
I don't know what the school committee is gonna want from us. You know, right now,
If only there were
I
some
don't even
members
know.
here we could
Pardon
ask.
me?
If only there were some members here we could ask.
It's certainly conceivable that the school committee might say, we have questions, we want you to
Well,
go tell us about
would
X,
you-
Y, and Z, which is not here. I don't know.
Would this, Mark, would this be a bullet point on your agenda, or would this be the entire meeting going over this?
It's
just a
hard to
bulletproof?
know.
Right
Because
now,
what
this,
happens is the subcommittees or the committees come in and they make a presentation and a recommendation.
So it's like 15 minutes, 10 minutes?
I think you would talk to Lorraine and tell her what you think you need for time.
It's a significant enough topic, so this information may be visited upon the school committee more than once.
Right.
And I suspect that the conversation will say, it's great to get this introduction, we want to devote at our next meeting or some future meeting an hour and a half to this because we need to dig in. That's all speculation.
Right.
but remember that
That's what I was
the issue before the school committee right now that's relevant, more relevant than this final report, is whether or not to submit an SOI.
Right.
And I don't have, I haven't been invited to present to the school committee on behalf of that yet. I've been told I'm going to be,
Yeah.
but I don't know when that's going to be. You know, fortunately, when we found out it's April 8th, we took some pressure off the school committee, which was good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping in early February, I get, 10 minutes or something like that to make a case about why they should submit an SOI. I may go through some of this stuff. Well, I gave I've already given the presentation here
Yeah.
that I would give in support of an SOI. But are they gonna want a follow-up to this, irrespective of whether or not they pursue an SOI? I think that they may form a building committee and say, you go handle it.
Okay.
Or they may submit the SOI and say, if we get invited to form a building committee, that group of people will address it.
Okay.
My sense of the school committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there's a lot of short-term pressing stuff on the table. And they really need to delegate some of this other stuff.
Yeah.
So two of those topics are, it's budget season, so, and it's a very challenging budget year, perhaps more challenging than in a number of years.
Yeah,
And then second, we would like to hire a permanent superintendent,
right,
and we'd like to do it, if it's possible, by June.
right,
And they're both pretty absorbing in the near term,
yes,
and important as well.
right,
And makes it a challenge to add one more, also very important thing, and to
Right.
feel like each of the members can devote the right attention to it.
right.
And by the way, the school committee has issued an invitation for people who want to be on the superintendent selection committee to step forward.
I know. Are you going to?
As I sit here right now, I'm not certain.
Okay.
So I have a general comment, if it's
Sure.
appropriate to go back to just general comments. One question that I've been asked more than once in Stowe is, I can't believe that the population has grown. You know, and it would be nice to have a historical chart or table from maybe even 1990 to the present, just showing it's a fact that there are more children in the high school, and therefore that question can be answered, that kind of thing.
Stowe just built a new school and people don't understand that the population's grown?
Absolutely. Yep. There's more than one that says, I can't believe that they've run out of space. So I'd like to be able to demonstrate, here's why, and here's how.
Well, and you have to remember that the school was built for a certain size because the
Right.
programs have changed,
Right.
which is what Perry was trying to demonstrate, I guess, with programming, that we won't reach the capacity that we do.
Right. And similarly, we had a superintendent for years saying we have a capacity of 1,250, which we found that's not really the case. And so there's this still many years of repetition about that number that
Right.
people won't remember and still find unbelievable that we're out of space.
That's in the report as well.
Right.
But
Do
it
we
talk,
have independent verification that 1250 was the capacity that the school was built for?
You'd have to go back to our last renovation. I remember that number being that it had to do something with our overall square footage, that the state formula, like we couldn't add classrooms and stuff. They wouldn't let us, we had issues in that last renovation. The most we could do is we covered in part for the cafeteria. We couldn't add square footage because
Number of lunches and those other things.
but we couldn't add classrooms because of, and I remember it then anecdotally being told that our square footage would cover 1,250, but we were at 800 then, and we were like, there's no way.
Yeah, I just don't understand how,
In the sense of like common areas are insufficient to deal with the population, kind of.
in terms of
It's
I
kind of
never
balance,
understood.
kind of- you never
and
understood.
just like straight up classrooms. I mean, I know we've removed some general purpose classrooms from the rotation to be used for other stuff, but even those thrown back in, 1250 just seems like a big number.
We couldn't,
I just,
yeah.
I don't understand where that.
I don't even know where it came from, Mark, to be
Right.
honest. I just remember hearing it and being aghast.
but I guess some of that stuff,
General classrooms plus science lab classrooms are there.
I got it. Hold on, let's give me a second. Hold on.
I mean, my recollection was, a lot of discussion was the 1250 was based on a lot more general classrooms that got
Right.
cannibalized over time for other purposes,
Right.
so that you kind of didn't have that same.
But even that, even
that.
minus the cannibalization, like I still just can't figure out fitting 1,250 kids into the
Another
building.
150 kids for your.
Well, it's
The common
just-
areas could
If
never
you figure
handle
that every classroom
Well,
is
Every
used
25
to
kids
like
is a class.
20 to
So you're
25
talking
students.
another
Another five.
5 or
Minimum
6
5 or 6
classes.
classrooms.
But even
Yeah.
then, like I don't.
Because they're booked 7 periods a day.
Right.
The kids
I
are
don't know.
booked.
I'd have to go back and look at where I got that number from, because I think, do I mention the number in-
Yeah.
in here?
Yeah.
And the very
And-
first, the
And
crowd.
I know when you go through the 2002 renovations,
Yeah.
and the conversion since then to classrooms to specialized space, it added up.
What added up?
Why we're running out of space, why we were out of space at 1183 if we were designed at 1083 if we were designed for 1250.
But even if you throw, I mean, like you said, it's due to the removal of 6 general purpose classrooms. Even if you throw 6 general purpose classrooms in there, I still don't think that gets us to 1250. And then throw in Mark's point, the common spaces. I mean, throw another 200 kids on top of what we have right now. Like, I don't know how we would fit.
You know, it's a projection based
got
upon
like
the square foot
1,050 right
standards
now.
of whatever was in place way back when.
Right.
Right, and
But
I don't know how much time, I hear you, the number's been thrown around, I don't know how much it's worth our time to devote to digging it out, because the fact is, it is in the community.
Right.
Maybe it was an offhand comment in 2000 and when we did the first renovation and it just stuck.
Yeah.
But I think the way you
That's-
put it in here is you say the school was believed to be large enough to accommodate a student population of 1250. Despite having a population of only 1083 and 1415, the school is seriously overcrowded with about 100 students using the auditorium hallway as a study hall due to lack of classrooms. I mean, I think that kind of sets it up. Yes, when the last renovation was done, it was believed this was going to be big enough for quite a long time, and guess what we're finding out?
Right.
We're caught short, it's not. So maybe even,
Right, it's an unexamined guess on
Yes.
what it could be.
I mean, is the curriculum that, you know, from 2002, is there a lot less course offerings so that you kind of you just, you know, kind of, there's less selection and you just kind of move in the, you know,
10 science
maximizing
classrooms.
each.
there's more selection, but,
Variety of specialized classrooms.
we have some
Like
special
animal
ed classrooms that have been taken out.
And then a variety of special education and alternative education classrooms.
Because that wasn't as big a part of the program as it is now. Special ed and alternative ed.
No, no.
No, I'm wrong, or no, it wasn't?
No, it was not as big of a part.
Right.
And we had, you know, a 4 or 5, sometimes 6% dropout rate. We're at 0 now.
But then you divide it up into different spaces, so,
Right.
you know, like the band room, you're gonna have kids in there. I mean,
How long
MSBA
ago
has
was
a
that
formula
high?
for it.
I'd have to go back and see, but
1995.
There's quite a
probably,
disparity between.
I came across one where the number was very high, it was like 8%.
Yes.
I mean, we had a,
I don't understand how.
and we didn't have options for them.
I'm unhappy, I'm quitting.
We didn't have anything. fit.
So going back
Yeah,
to
we
the
can
report, are there any other major changes people would like to see to it?
I guess it's not a format change, but it happens throughout the document. We had talked a couple of times about the definitions, and particularly regarding the important selection, where
Yep.
we talk about it's the entire student body. So, you know, kind of, once again, if people are gonna get a hold of the document for the general public, you know, is it really the entire or some vast majority or some,
Major segment. perhaps,
yeah, so something a little less than
Okay.
entire, so that, you know, if there's a class or something that's impacted that impacts only seniors, well, that's only 25% of the population, you know, kind
Still
of
could
like,
be important.
you know, so, I mean, you get into some of those
Yeah, okay.
majority, significant portion, I don't know, we had talked that we had
Yeah,
kicked some
let
things
me-
around.
Let me see if what I can,
It just ripples through the document,
Right.
those same definitions, so it's not really,
okay.
I just don't want someone taking it and being, well, it's being so
Taking it
literal.
Literally, yeah, okay. How about to most of the student body? You okay with that for now,
Yeah,
till the next change?
yeah. Just so it's not 100%.
Okay. Any other major changes?
The only other thing I had saw is in the introduction where we talk about, wanting to kind of state that, things are generally safe, kind of what have you,
Yes.
in that second paragraph. Well, when you kind of go into other sections, we have some conflicting verbiage where we kind of say, oh, something's dangerous or kind of whatever, but we, up front here, we're saying it's, kind of perfectly safe. So it's more of just needing
Yeah,
to kind of be
all right.
consistent.
I need some help finding that stuff because I'm not.
Let's see. I know I had found some. But that's not a formatting thing, that was just a, like, as an example,
Yeah.
page 9, last paragraph, second line in the last paragraph, regarding the science
Okay.
classes, we talk about they're both awkwardly and dangerously configured.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's fine.
but I thought that's more of a, I understand it's more of a, but there's bigger picture kind of.
No, you don't want to have those kinds of contradictions in here, because
Yeah.
I
it
agree.
weakens the whole report.
Yeah.
But I need help finding all that
No,
stuff.
that's more of the wordsmithing of making sure we
Right.
have some of that stuff, but I just wanted to, it's
Yeah.
something I noticed, so I kind of wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I got an email, if we go to page 4, I'll just bring this up. I got an email from Don Hawks apologizing for not being here tonight, because he's got a Board of Selectmen issue. But in the paragraph that's highlighted, he believes that should specifically say that it was not unanimous, that it was only by a majority vote, and even we should tell what the vote is. I'm not sure why he thinks that's important. I'm not keen on it, but I want to bring it up because he asked about it, and I want to see if anyone else has any reaction to it.
I think that might draw negative attention to it.
Is it common practice to indicate the number of votes?
If we were having minutes, you might do that. Again, I don't know why he wants that. If he attends the next meeting, he can, urge us on or not.
But isn't that captured in the,
It
In the
is
minutes?
in the minutes.
So, I mean,
and
it's-
usually, I think when you're sort of reporting this kind of stuff, people will call out when the vote was unanimous, but kind of when it's not unanimous, it's,
I think it's awkward to kind of provide, it was a,
Well, but to Maureen's point, all this says is we voted. It
Doesn't
doesn't
say
say
vote.
we voted unanimously.
Right.
No, it's
No.
So
completely
I
accurate.
think it's just clear that there was a vote, and, a majority voted to do this, and that's what happened. So
I think it's a true statement, and we have,
minutes to back
minutes
that up.
that back it up that say, hey, it
Okay.
wasn't unanimous, and kind of, but it doesn't also need to be unanimous. I mean, I get the point, if it was unanimous,
It'd be
you
nice-
you probably would point it out,
Right.
Or you
And-
could generously say, we voted, though not unanimously, blah, 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 blah. And-
But nothing in this document is unanimous, really. I
Right.
mean, we came to consensus on what was important, and we didn't always agree on things, but I don't see the need to call any of it out. This is a consensus on the
Document.
different
Okay.
issues and a consensus vote.
Okay. I'm happy to move on then. I just wanted to bring that up.
So I do have one other general comment in that I feel like it might be desirable, maybe in the front end summary or somewhere, to have a couple paragraphs talking about how hard it is to run a school at 95% utilization. And
I
I'm
think-
not
I
sure
agree.
if we-
that's that
document.
Perry's 2-page document.
Yeah, it doesn't answer that question. What I tried to address was how do space constraints impact current and future innovative programming. But I think what you just asked is I mean, like literally today, I'm trying to figure out where to put some classes for second semester, and I don't know.
Right.
You don't have enough.
And so my
Where to put it.
idea is trying to answer the selectman or citizen says, well, you've got these empty classrooms, what's the problem? So I feel like it's desirable to answer that question here in this document, so that it can be understood before they ask the question.
Well, if you're gonna do that, you might wanna note that the MSBA recommends that 85% utilization is.
Sure, but that's not an answer to that question.
But
Right.
it lets you know, because if you told me you were at 95%, I'm like, oh, great, you get 5%.
So
Right.
why
You
is
say that in
15?
midsummer, don't you? You mentioned the
I
85%
think he
thing.
does, yeah.
Yeah, I would not want to go down that path. And the reason I wouldn't highlight it up at the beginning is if you've got an enrollment projection that says you're going to have a drop in population, you've just cut the main legs out of your argument. And there's lots of other stuff that needs to be done in the school, even if the population remains the same or even declines slightly.
Right. But it is
So I
actually.
don't want to overemphasize the utilization issue to the point of if you're going to make that paramount and you're going to, you're taking a three-legged stool and making one leg longer than the other.
Right, I don't claim it has to be in the front. I think though, and part of why the number 10 classrooms comes up, it has something to do with utilization as
Right.
well as the study. And so I think it's desirable to support that
But-
10 with some conversation. It doesn't have to be in the front.
Right, but the other thing is that argument about 10 additional classrooms, that's not a space needs argument. That's a building committee argument.
Huh?
All right? We don't,
Our report says that we think it needs 10 classrooms and 1 science room.
So
okay.
what is the basis for that is kind of the desirable thing to answer.
And I think that it's fair to say in there that MSBA recommends a ceiling of 85%.
Okay.
Um,
And if I'm just Joe taxpayer, my argument is, who's MSBA and why do I care what they think?
And we are significantly over that. The principal report scheduling is constrained. We had a lot of conversations about whether or not kids can get their classes based on how the schedule is built, and the schedule
Right.
built being constrained by the lack of these 10 classrooms.
Okay. And if you've got an overcrowding problem at the school, why do you have to break that down between overcrowding and utilization?
How are you supporting your need for 10 classrooms in here?
You've got too many students. You've got too many students and the classroom sizes are very large.
I'm wondering, since this is all, the space testing force is working towards a recommendation to write the SOI,
Yeah.
that maybe this should be more about the 5 requirements for the SOI.
Okay.
I was trying to find it, there used to be a list of the
Yeah.
5 requirements. I just couldn't find it. What I did come across though was, they just published a report saying, and I said it, 'cause I'm gonna send it to you, about they've been closing, they closed 80 schools in Massachusetts, and that the enrollment is going down. So overcrowding is a tough sell. It sounds like it's gonna be a tough sell for them.
Yeah.
But there are other issues, because one of
Okay.
them is, do the classes or does the school fit the programming? So can you actually teach within the environment? Another one is, are your systems up, have they been maintained? If they've been maintained, are they so old that now it's costing you more money to maintain them?
Okay.
So there's like the balance there, so they're very outdated.
Okay.
But I'm wondering if we're recommending an SOI, should we be gearing the
I'll go look at-
presentation
I'll go
towards
look
the
at-
SOI?
We do a one-page summary hitting those 5 points.
Yeah, I'll look
Yeah.
at incorporating something like that in there. I made a note to do that.
Because that would be easier to read.
Okay. You know, going back to utilization, it's a tough subject to explain. But if you know, if you want to put a section in there, I'll put a section in there.
But that goes towards the overcrowding, right? I mean, we can't use the building. The building is not set up in a way that we can fit the programming.
Programming is constrained by building, by
Right. Right.
space.
That's one of the requirements.
You know,
It's not
right now, the
necessarily
overcrowding and the curriculum issues are so tightly intertwined, you can't untangle them. If the population goes down, I don't know if you're still gonna have an issue with specialized spaces. You know, but for the bulk of the report, I'm treating it as a snapshot of this point in time.
Okay.
I'm just keeping in mind the fact that the facts as they stand today may change in the future, and I don't want to rely solely on overcrowding as the reason to address the needs of the school, because there are a lot of needs there. I guess I need some help understanding utilization separately from overcrowding.
I don't know if it is separate. I don't understand how you would separate that out necessarily.
Do you mean like the types of courses that are offered and the various sections that they have in the school? Is that what you mean?
No, but I've got 2.5 or 3 pages at the start of section A and at the start of section B on overcrowding.
Yeah.
And what the direct effects are on the students. To turn around and say, by the way, you need to have an argument there about utilization also, I think makes the issue more confusing. To me, it makes the issue more confusing as opposed to making it easier to understand or more compelling.
Right, if you say, we've got too many kids, we've just got times when we've got more kids than we've got space in which to put them, like somebody says, oh, okay. If you say, we've got a 93% utilization rate, MSBA recommends 85%, you're saying the exact same thing, but the first one is in easily understandable English.
It's
and the second
tangible,
one is-
yeah.
But I guess the question is, and I agree that as a general, particularly up front, you know, kind of big picture, you want to dumb it down and
first thing.
simplify it,
Right.
right? But to me, whether it's in an appendix or kind of something else, you should have that meat for those that kind of want to have
Person
that.
says, wait a
meat.
minute, what do you mean that you don't have enough space for kids? Like, what do you actually mean? Well, we have a 93% utilization rate, here's how that plays out.
So you could go back into something and drill down further and kind of get to understand it. But if someone doesn't care to understand that and they're okay with the first big picture kind of, hey, we're overcrowded, we don't have enough rooms, we need more rooms. I mean, I think it.
So I'll take Perry's 2-pager and I'll modify it a little bit, and we'll make that a special section on utilization, and that'll be a true appendix.
Yeah.
Okay? We can do that. But I think I only have a PDF copy of that. So if you could send me a Word document so I could modify it.
do that right now.
Excuse me.
Are you gonna include this?
I was not going to include the spreadsheet. I think it would be immensely distracting.
Yes, I agree.
I don't think there's a word in the spreadsheet that's not in the report already.
Okay.
But,
I would agree. I mean, I think it's kind of to put another appendix that has all the.
yeah.
It's a
The
working
spreadsheet.
document, not a presentation document.
Right. Right.
Okay.
And I'll try to shorten up the executive summary.
I mean, I don't know if it needs to get. You're saying shortened up?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
I mean, I don't know if it needs to get shortened up. I guess my initial comment was that the way it was reading, the main body was actually shorter than the executive summary.
So-
But I wouldn't necessarily kind of say, hey, the executive summary needs to be shorter.
So what I think I'll do with the executive summary is, for example, overcrowding. I'll take what's now Appendix A and I'll break it up so that overcrowding is Section A. And below that is the science labs, and that'll be Section B. And that'll just be, Appendix A chopped up.
But the executive summary would still have those few paragraphs
Right.
regarding those topics.
Right. But it'll just be easier to say, here's where I need to go to learn more about this particular area. The bad news is, I'm going to make each section the start of a new page so it's clean. And so the report gets bigger, but there's going to be more white space. Eventually, you'll need a whole disk drive just for this one report.
But it's dense content, I think it needs that, I think it,
Well, you need some white space, yeah. And I was...
Space for notes.
I can't afford to print this whole thing out at home. So I was looking at this printout here and I was saying, you know what? I would not want to reduce the type either.
No.
So,
Hey, can I ask a question? So in this, you say on page 3, there's an immediate need for 10 new general purpose classrooms and 1 additional science lab to eliminate the problems caused by overcrowding.
right.
In my utilization thing, I said that in order to bring the utilization rate down to the 85% recommended by the MSBA, Neshoba would need 3.3 additional general education classrooms. Are you including in that also accommodating, reducing the number of kids like in study halls? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
I was talking to someone about how much time we spent deciding was it a foyer or a hallway, just today.
Well, we're coming up on 8 o'clock. And for those of you who came in a little later, we didn't have a quorum, so we said we were only going to work till 8 o'clock if we didn't have a quorum. And now that we have a quorum, the question is, do we want to go on? Now, you were going to present something tonight, but Kathy's not here, and Don Hawks isn't here, so I don't know if you still want to present tonight, or...
I'm not going to be able to be at the next meeting.
Okay.
So if you want me to present it, I mean, it's a document. I don't know how much discussion is going to be needed. I'm happy to hand it to people, field some quick questions, and then
Okay.
We can
Leave
put
it
them
at
so we have a
that.
camera and then they can watch it.
Yeah.
or I mean, if you want, we can break and I can just pass it out, give you the extra copies, pass it out at the next meeting, and hope that
Well, let's keep going.
there's no.
All right.
I feel like time is of the essence, and
Okay, so that's 8 o'clock.
I apologize for being
I can keep my comments very limited if you
All right. Do you want to put this aside for now? I mean, you've given me some work to do. And we'll go.
every meeting we give you work to do.
And I know I don't want to have too much, but, so should we go on to Perry's future curriculum now?
All right. So I tried to come up with something that was relatively concise and visually, somewhat easy to read. And so what I did, you'll see it's laid out in a table with 3 columns. The first one is current innovative programming. In other words, things that we've done in the last, I think I define that as within the last 5 years. Future programming plans, things that we would like to do in the future. And I did share this document with all the department heads and got their feedback. And then how space constrains both things we're trying to do right now and things we might do in the future. And I tried to put it into some buckets as well.
Okay, can you send me a soft copy of this too?
Yep.
Did you want to talk about this? Because you're going to be asleep and it's watching.
I don't have any comments right
I guess my
now.
question is, does it accomplish what you all were hoping it would accomplish? Does it answer the questions you had, or the things that I could add, change, delete?
I mean, it seemed very useful information. I guess one of the questions tying it back to, so like the 10 classrooms plus the 1 lab was really just to kind of bring down utilization, get people into classrooms versus, kind of what have you, but didn't really address any of this, or does it inherently address some of this?
Some of this, if you add 10 general use classrooms, some of the things could be accommodated. For example, having more interdisciplinary courses, more business courses, because they don't necessarily require specialized space, but other stuff in here requires specialized space. And journalism, you give me just a regular education classroom, that doesn't really accomplish what I need for a journalism broadcasting space. And that doesn't help me with theater arts classes and conflicts between that and wellness, with other wellness classes that I'm trying to do, with some of the STEM classes, particularly within computer science.
I think you say what you don't have here, but you don't say what you want
Or what you need?
or what you need. And I think you need to be more specific. I mean, I think internally you know what you're talking about, but to us that are more distant from it, it's not apparent what you're really asking for. So you've got to.
So rather than saying we do not have a dance space, it's we need a dance space to do X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
Well, actually, if you say that, I mean, you might get the public coming back and saying, we are not a dance school.
That's.
In order to build a dance program, we need this. And we don't want to build a dance program, we don't build a dance
That's right.
program. We don't want to have more rad classes, but in order to do this, we need. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I approached it from space constraints rather than here's what we need.
But, because I think it's important to kind of distinguish, kind of in the report of when we say, okay, 10 classrooms, what is that for? If it's just to kind of, hey, that just gets us out of what we have right now, not growing, that's just this level. It almost seems like it begs the question, well, if you wanted to go to the next level for the future,
Right.
what would that look like?
Yep. Right.
And I think that some of these are, a science lab or a classroom. We need a video broadcast studio, which the district's talked about for 15 years. A specialized classroom that could accommodate dance or rad or, a meditation group. I don't think it's a dance studio because I don't want to give the impression that, we're building this whole new.
Just use that as an example.
It's, looking at multiple uses for these rooms or a really robust program. Journalism, the video piece is on its way to being a very robust program.
And you might want to, like, alternative education, you say that you're putting them in, the impression I got was putting them in a general educational classroom is an issue. I mean,
To a certain extent, yeah.
so I guess my question would be, is general public, what is alternative education and what would that look like? You know, if you're just saying you want more than just a classroom.
So that's an interesting question. Are those the kinds of answers that we want in this? Because that's,
Potential solutions, sure. for people
because I
to
can talk
understand.
about it at a bit of a, 30,000 foot level. If you get into, well, what would alternative education look like? I could write 5 pages on what would alternative education look like. Is that what we're talking about for this? Like what, I don't want to provide too much information, I don't want to provide too little
Well-
information. I can definitely add space needs to support innovation. So I've got impact of space constraints, space needs to support innovation.
I guess it's a question of, for alternative education, and I don't know exactly what you mean by alternative education, but let's say it's more individualized study. In that case, you don't need general purpose classrooms. You need smaller spaces that you
Right.
can meet in groups of 10 or 15.
Yep.
And you need multiples of those. And I think that's the kind of specific stuff we need, in the case of.
That level of specificity I can put together pretty easily.
Yeah, the RAD and stuff like that. And, you may want to say, we need a generalized large space, larger than a regular classroom, that's, to have these,
Configured flexibly.
where you can have a lot of motion in there. I mean, it's not a gym that you want, but you need a large room that permits people to move around without bumping into one another. And you're right, it doesn't, you don't want to say, I want a dance hall, and I want a RAD room, and I want, a meditation room. You need one general room where all of that stuff can occur, but it's not a classroom and it's not a gym, so you've got to be more specific about what kind of space it is.
Utilized.
It offers flexibility for,
Yes.
something. I'm not sure what, but
Activity and motion,
non-standard,
yeah.
non-traditional.
So I'd like to just ask or throw out, on the alternative education, one consequence of that is that you end up, you hope and wish, for a lower dropout rate, so you're able to serve a challenged population. And I wonder if this is an appropriate place to place that sentence in, saying this is the purpose for this thing, and that's why we have this need.
It's one person. Our dropout rate's not particularly high at this point.
We've brought it down.
We brought it down.
Right.
I mean, that would be one of many purposes.
But we brought it down and have realized the need to have alternatives for the
Right.
kids who struggle with it. Thus, the finally getting some alt-ed going in the fledgling alt-ed going in the high school. But I think we've struggled with having and wanting more appropriate programming for these guys who are not traditional high school comfortable.
I'm not seeing in here, and I'm wondering if I'm missing it. And I know I missed a few meetings, so maybe you guys decided not to include it. But what about like your I'm gonna say the wrong word. The room with all the tools where the kids go to metal fab, is that what it's called?
Sheet metal, yeah.
Sheet metal and
Meadows.
yeah. Didn't that need to be updated, or weren't the tools very old in there too, or?
Somehow we never discussed that.
Yeah. That's-
Somehow in 2 years, we've never discussed that.
No, we
It's
have.
been mentioned.
We
It's been
have.
mentioned, we even took a tour of it, but
Yeah, we
we've
talked
never
about it.
said it's an area that
We
needs
have.
to be addressed.
And
We
actually,
have.
Whether you did or not, I'm actually kind of glad it didn't come up in here, because at one point, when we did the SOI for the labs,
Yeah.
they were going away. And I'm glad they're staying.
No,
No,
I think
I-
they need to stay.
They need to
You're
stay.
talking about, it's not alternative education, but it's part of the.
It's part of the comprehensive high
Yes.
school's offerings.
Thank you. My brain is asleep. I was just yawning a minute ago.
We don't utilize it.
Huh?
I don't think we utilize it to the extent that we could.
I have no idea how many kids take that course or how popular it is. I don't know.
So what do you have? You have a wood shop and you have a metal
Shop
shop?
website, Julia.
With pretty decent square footage,
Mhm.
because the equipment is all antique, and back then everything was huge and
Okay.
giant setups.
Wasn't
And-
it from the 60s? Am I remembering
Oh yeah,
correctly?
it was
or
from
no?
the original
Oh,
high
yeah.
school.
Yeah.
So, but as you sit here right now, there's no need to change.
It's not
Where the space
unsafe
that's
is what I
used.
remember,
It's
but,
No.
it's not a driver for
but it's like
renovating.
45 years old.
But I guess the question is there a space issue or is there a capital, equipment
Expense
issue with needing new equipment or
But
kind of some of that
Would
stuff?
that be part of this report that you just provided? Maybe it's not a popular course and maybe I'm just,
No, we have kids who sign up for it, and we've actually put a fair amount of money into buying some pretty cool new equipment for them to use. The space itself, I don't know, is the problem. I think it comes down to the equipment that's available
Okay.
and getting rid of some of the equipment and creating more usable space in there. But we have bought some new equipment, some pretty cool, 3D printing and CNC router and a
Is it-
couple other things.
Some of the newer equipment takes less footprint, so there's just more room to kind of...
It's less footprint and it allows more stuff too, less stuff
Yeah.
by hand and more computer programming, rather than trying to, do some sort of an intricate design by hand. You program it in and then it does.
and the kids do CAD in that area too, or is that in the computer business
No,
technology?
that's in the computer lab.
Okay.
There'll be some times when there'll be some crossover where kids will develop something that they'll then build in there, but the woods and metals shop tends to be, they're starting to do more crossover work around there, but it's been mostly separate.
So with the kitchen appliances and with some of the compressors and fans in the building that are very old, we said that we would defer to the building committee on how to address those. And it sounds like the space for the metal shop and the wood shop are fine, but the equipment needs to be upgraded.
Modernizing.
But that's not a maintenance issue, I think that's a curriculum issue, those kids, that's
Well,
their
but
curriculum.
where I'm going with this is, I think I would add it to the list, and, we've got a quorum.
It's not critical, I agree with that.
No, I would put it as defer to the building committee to upgrade the equipment.
But I don't think of it as the same as a kitchen fan. I mean,
It
the lunch
impacts
ladies
it
would like a
impacts the
kitchen
students
fan, but
more directly than
That's
the
true.
kitchen
the
stuff
kids,
does.
the kids
Okay.
that want to be a carpenter or metal fab,
The kitchen was easy because we were
Well,
from a
if
student
you're looking
perspective, it
job
doesn't really
training,
impact them.
They're not gonna get job training here, but,
I know that would be
They-
for tech school, but still.
From what I
um,
understood, we don't utilize those spaces as much as we could.
What do you mean by as
But
much
I-
as we could?
I mean, the kids aren't signing up for those classes.
Yeah, we don't have particularly
The
high
numbers.
enrollment.
Yeah.
Well, although it's interesting because we are seeing increased enrollment in more computer-based CAD-ish sort of stuff, but not increased enrollments in the more kind of hands-on building
so
sort of
would it
stuff.
be
That can-
desirable or recommended?
So,
I would say at least desirable.
I'm not sure it's not a space issue.
That's true, it's not a space
It's
issue.
an
Yeah, that's what I'm
equipment issue.
struggling with too, is
And
that
it's a programming issue. I
That's
think
true.
that what we're looking for, we'd like more modern equipment, we'd like to
Yeah.
modernize the curriculum, we'd like to increase enrollment. Those are the things I'm hearing around here. But the
That's true.
space needs task force.
But I guess since you say that space is fine, then it doesn't belong in
Well,
this report.
it's space
Okay.
needs, but we talk about mechanical and we talk about a lot of other
Yeah.
systems in the
But
building.
those are kind
He
of
wants to
integrated
put
to the
He just
space.
wants to defer.
Yeah, but similarly, we're not looking at the computers and whether or not they need to be
Right.
upgraded.
It's
and-
equipment.
Right, it's
Yeah.
equipment that's used for the teaching, so. yeah,
It's
that-
good to know on the list that you have, like, on this list.
But even if it gets deferred, it's on the list to kind of say, hey, if you're doing a project, these are things that you want to look at.
Yeah,
I would
but
agree
then,
with that.
then we're changing the focus of space needs.
Yeah,
And I
And,
think,
and turning it into general
I don't want to muddy the waters.
curriculum issues.
yeah. And I think that
And as
things-
much as I'd like to see that stuff upgraded, I don't want to undercut in all the other stuff. Yeah, lose
Right.
the focus.
Well, when I brought it up, I was half hoping Perry would say, oh, yeah, we need to make that space bigger.
I mean, a larger space would be great, but I don't,
Yeah. And then we could put it in. But if
that's not
it's-
If
constraining.
the building committee is looking at, ooh, what should we really do with these kinds of things, then
Yeah.
yeah, and in fact, I think from the science lab thing, we did figure out a way to kind of reconfigure that space to use it a little better.
Yeah, because we've talked about that space, adding some classroom area to it, so the kids could actually sit down, because as you transition away from that general carpentry and welding to more prototyping and the engineering, you know, so I think that space,
Could be modernized for sure.
absolutely, and I
Yeah.
don't know if the square footage is the issue rather than the programming and the
Okay.
curriculum and the.
Right.
Yeah.
Bill, if you look at the SOI drawings, it became a classroom.
It did.
Yeah,
They
it did.
took it away
yeah.
from SAD.
That's different, but yeah, and
Yeah.
yes,
Because
that was
they
very,
created
very
a STEM
exciting.
classroom
Yeah.
rather than a metals and wood shop.
And
Okay.
I think our other things in the defer category really were kind of space issues that we said, well, they're not drivers, you know, it's
Yeah.
storage and it's the ice machine, the athletic, but it's old, it's taking up space in there, it's, you know, the kitchen appliances that they say are from the 60s.
I did add a bullet point specifically for storage throughout the building.
Yeah, I saw that. And so, yes, those are deferred, but they are directly space issues,
Right.
they're not.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you.
So if
Do
that
we have-
room
do we
were
have more with-
cannibalized
Well,
for,
do we have more with Perry? Because we got way off topic here. With Perry's.
The big piece, correct me if I'm wrong, but the big piece of feedback I got was, you told us about the constraints and some innovative things you might like to do, but what's the space you need in order to support that? So I've
Yes.
added a column to my,
Okay.
But don't call it a dance studio.
I titled it Dance Studio and Other Needs. That's not gonna fly, you don't think? I just called it Future Space Needs.
Okay.
I will try not to.
Flexible.
Yeah.
Multi-purpose.
I will figure out a way to,
Or a mini
Say
gym,
it.
something like
A mini gym. You'll have wrestling in it before you know it.
that. You can have wrestling in there no matter what. You could call it a dance hall and you'll have wrestling in there.
Probably.
As long as it
That-
moves from the
that fits.
foyer
That's right.
or
that's where it
hallway.
is.
Oh,
That's
actually,
where
speaking of
wrestling
No,
storage.
no, it's all over the place.
I was walking through the high school yesterday, and we went up a set of stairs, and there's this area that's, you know, 6 or 8 feet wide, all the way back, and I'm looking at it and saying, you know, put up a wall, and you got some nice storage.
Which area? Because I'll do it right away. We can use it.
that might be done by
It was
Monday.
a dead space, I was like, wow, that's a nice closet right here.
Let me tell you, if there's like space under a stairwell, there's junk in there.
There is, I mean, we are, well, you know, we've taught it.
There's
There's a lot of stuff.
We went up, walked up the other day. I went
Is there
on
anything
a
else we
walk,
should
door.
discuss?
It's a nice big area.
What are our next steps?
Bob's just gonna keep working.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
We'll go home, watch some television, fall asleep, Bob will go home, get back to work.
That's right, I have to buy another keyboard. We're all set.
Minutes?
You want to go through minutes? Yes, if everyone's
Also-
okay with minutes. Mark, you have some questions on minutes?
Actually, I didn't, no,
Oh, okay.
if we agree to them, let's say so and.
All right,
check
I
them off
have
our
two
list.
small issues.
Yeah, just if they're typos or grammar kind of things, then just send them to me. I don't, what we always did at school committee was spelling typos, a missing word, that kind of stuff. We
Yeah.
just sent the corrections to Lita, and she would make them if
Okay,
there were concerns about things missing or maybe misinterpreted.
well, I don't know what the correct thing here is on the top of the second page. It says the graduating senior class is
Oh,
266.
I'm missing a number, a digit in there.
Yeah, but I don't know which digit. I think it's 233, but I'm
No, I
not
think
sure.
it's is it
The
230?
graduating senior class is 266 members.
253.
253, okay.
Yes.
So I can just send that along to Alita?
Yeah.
All right. So there's that change, and
There was one other one you mentioned, and I
Um,
didn't.
at the last page, our member towns are looking at, it should say $300,000 a year for 30 years.
Okay.
All right? So with those corrections, is there a motion to accept the minutes?
I move to accept the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All those abstaining? We be done with minutes. Thank you. Is there a motion? Oh, go ahead. You had a question? No? Okay. You were starting to say something when I interrupted, tried to get back to Paris.
Yes, actually, so if it came, this is perhaps the building committee topic. If it came that the machine shop was cannibalized for other purposes, then it becomes a space issue, doesn't it?
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's conceivable that may come out in the whoever is
That was,
looking at
that
it.
was in the proposed science lab renovation was
So
cannibalization of that
does it belong
space.
on there then? Or no?
Well, I think it's like any other curriculum issue. If you're going to take that space away, you have to make a decision. Are you dropping that from the curriculum, or are you going to replace it?
That's true.
Right, and
You know,
we've got,
it's the same with the computer lab or the art room or anything like that.
Yeah.
So is there a motion to adjourn?
Go for it.
now we're all on stay.
Pizza's coming in 5 minutes.
I can see him almost say it. Go ahead.
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Good night. Thank you.
Nice job, once again.
That's good. My vision's getting out of here after 10.
When do you want me to